journey, but also you can refresh your memories if you're well past into your mid 30s or 40s or where you are in your journey. So thank you again for your time today. And my name is Venkdesh, and I'm working as a senior project manager for ASOS here in London. I was born in India and studied and did my engineering there, and then moved on to into IT. Started as a web designer in 2000, and it's now like 20 years. I'm still like, I feel like I just started my career. So it's a nice thing to look back and refresh yourself, and once in a while um, uh, get inspired and motivated to go to the next level. So I'm sharing with you what I've learned in my 20 years of experience, and it's a pleasure to be with you today. So the usual disclaimer, this is all my personal opinions from various leaders and books that I've read, and it doesn't represent any particular organization or company. So we're going to begin with a very brief introduction that kind of sets the context for what it means to think from a life and a career point of view, and how you can apply it from a product perspective in your product world, which kind of sets the context for the whole session and the upcoming slides. Then we'll move on to understanding how our brain and our mind works, a little bit of delving into cognitive neuroscience and how it's very helpful for us. That will set us up for enjoying success in our career and happiness in life. We'll conclude the session with a little bit of content on what it means to think from a wellness perspective and why it's important, and why and how taking a holistic approach will be very helpful for us. And then we come to the most important part of the session today, which is the Q&A. So I would like to hear more questions from you, and I'd like to keep this interactive. So if at any point of time you think you want to stop and ask a question, feel free to go ahead and do that. You can ping it in a chat window, or you can unmute yourself and you can ask, and I'm happy to answer your question. If it's going to be covered in one of the upcoming slides, I will tell the same, and we will keep it for a little bit later. So I think that kind of sets us to the beginning of the presentation. If you're okay, can we move on? Hello? Hey guys.
Yeah, I think we can move on.
Okay, good. This session is all about you. It's about your life, your career, and how you can set yourself up for enjoying success in your career and happiness in your life. And the key thing here is to understand that you always have the power within you to change your thoughts, to change your mind, and how you can change your life at any given point of time. So of course, every one of you, all of us as human beings, we are all very unique. So you, in the words of Marie Forleo, there never was another you, and there never will be another you. So you as a person, you are very unique. So what we're going to see today is not just a collection of tools or toolkits. It's like a kind of a basic principles which you can apply in your life. And that's when it begins to be very, very different and very unique. The fundamental principles themselves, they are common. They're like as old as rocks and hills. So you can easily refresh your memories and reapply them at any given point of time. But depending on the context, depending on your own beliefs, your aims and ambitions, it could be a little different. So that's what we're going to see today. So it doesn't mean that I'm giving you a false hope that next week you can increase your salary, or next month you can become very rich, or I'm not promising something of those lines. But definitely, as much as hard work and the patience is required, there are certain fundamental principles which kind of differentiate the very extraordinary successful people from the others. So I've been very curious about learning what is it that differentiates successful people from others, some organizations which are more successful compared to their competition. So that was what I was trying to learn all these years, and I've kind of like summarized them in a few slides. It's obviously impossible to cover everything in one session, but I've tried to do some justice in taking the core principles, what I have understood. And this is not just that I read from some books, but I have seen that work in my own life in my 20 years across 3 different countries in 7 different cities. I've been able to see something that really works. So that's what I thought I will share with you today. So, so definitely, these are like basic principles which you can take away and apply them in a way that will fit in with your job, your career, and your life. So in the upcoming slides, we're going to see some fundamental essential principles. So before moving on to those principles, it's important to understand there are certain kind of like misinterpretations or myths about life and career. Things like don't need to hesitate, don't waste your time. People always say these kind of things, like don't wait for others, don't be too serious. So when you're facing them, you kind of need to ask yourself, are these really true? Are they like universal truths which you can apply at any point of time, or are they really applicable for me? Like say, do's and don'ts. When we look at the do's, like do have fun, do your best, do all you can, being good for everybody, and the need to help others. These are all really important, but you need to analyze these do's and don'ts. So some of them seem to be like very oversimplified, and some of them like very, very generalized. So not applicable at all points of time for everyone. So it's really important to take into consideration the context, in what context you are trying to apply some principle, and how it will benefit you and the wider team at large or the company. So in those situations, the context plays a very, very key role. So let's see some important principles. In a typical day-to-day life, you would have seen like there are some pressures, there are some challenges, there are some nice moments, there are some good moments, there are some kind of like not so good moments. So it's really important to understand that it's perfectly normal, natural to experience those emotions, but it's also important to understand that you need to be very cheerful, optimistic, and kind of like being a tough-minded optimist to take on what happens in your life and career. As a product person, you might be interacting with different kinds of stakeholders. Somebody could be from marketing, somebody could be from finance, somebody could be from design, UI, UX, engineering, development, coding and testing. And so different kinds of people and different expectations, and it all happens in a typical day-to-day life. But what's important to understand is how they affect you and the people around you. So that's the real key thing, which kind of like bedrock of people and people relationships, and putting that into the right context. So in a moment, we are going to see how this all comes into play. So to put it in the context of life, here is a beautiful quote by C.S. Lewis, a British author who wrote the Chronicles of Narnia, a contemporary, a friend of J.R.R. Tolkien, who wrote Lord of the Rings. So Lewis says, you can't go back and change the beginning, but you can start where you are and you can change the ending. So what's clear from this quote is the beautiful three things that he has nicely captured: the past, the present, and the future. So you need to understand that there's no point in simply wasting our time thinking about the past, but it's very normal to be carried away thinking about, oh, that was a nice thing, that was a nice project, that was a nice company. So it's very often very normal, natural to go back into the past, but we need to be very conscious and enjoy the present, bring back lessons from the past, apply them so you can focus on the future. The picture on the right is the place where they meet, the Oxford pub there, the group called Inklings, all nice literary folks who wrote all those things like Chronicles of Narnia and Lord of the Rings. So it's important to take away that the present is more important. So how do we do that? What happens in your usual day? So don't get too worried about the picture on the right. It's a beautiful, colorful picture of our human brain. The important thing to take away here is the part that deals with all of thinking. How do we think, we as human beings? So the prefrontal cortex, also called as the neocortex. So neo meaning new. So the prefrontal cortex deals with all of the thinking, the rational stuff, the intellectual stuff that we tend to do. And that's the key thing that kind of differentiates us from other living organisms on the planet. So when it comes to thinking, you would probably already know, and you definitely, I think you would agree, positive thinking is very, very important. And to stay optimistic is very, very important. But as a normal human person, we also deal with a lot of things called as unhelpful thought patterns, which are called as cognitive distortions. Examples of them and the way they appear are like all or nothing approach, thinking in binary ways, like zeros and ones, either this or that. So that approach is not a very helpful thought pattern. to focus on everything else that is required, or either I do this or nothing. So that is not very helpful for pattern. Sometimes we tend to oversimplify things. Sometimes we kind of generalize, oh no, all these people are like that. All those people behave like that. All those, that kind of a general stereotypical approach is not very helpful. As a child, as a kid, if you think back, you might have been very creative. But as you grow up, what happens is with age, some sort of rigidity sets in. And we tend to expect certain things to happen in a certain way, and we give more importance to certainty, which means we are giving less importance to flexibility, which means lack of creativity, which means lack of growth, because you're not able to embrace change, and change is the only constant. So what happens is we go by rules and rigid patterns, which is distorting us, which is not helping us to make progress in our career and life. And another example is like labeling, like self-labeling ourselves, like I'm not a good speaker, I'm not a good writer, I'm not a good painter, I'm not a good programmer, I'm not a good manager. These kind of thoughts set in, which means like you're labeling yourself, and that's kind of the mental filter with which you see the world. And a shift in the perspective could be very helpful sometimes. So these kind of thought patterns set in probably in a young age during childhood, and we'll see some examples in the upcoming slides. And getting too skeptical where it is absolutely not necessary, too often jumping to conclusions, playing the blame game, pointing fingers at someone, and unnecessarily getting too personalized. All of these are absolutely not at all helpful. So when we are more conscious of these kind of thought patterns, what helps us is we can rephrase them in a very positive way, which is good for us and for the people around us. So we've seen kind of what happens in the brain and how we think. And when we come to the mind, is a very wonderful quote by Albert Einstein, who says the intuitive mind is a sacred gift, and the rational mind is a faithful servant. We have created a society. What did we do? We created a society that honors the servant and has forgotten the gift. So we've forgotten the gift. That's what Einstein says, isn't it? So from a product perspective, you might really appreciate the fact that we deal with a lot of creative stuff. We want to think about the future, which is really part of it is like the intuitive way of thinking. And the intuitive mind, what Einstein says, is a very sacred gift. And you really would find it very helpful for you to embrace that part of the mind, not only dealing with analysis and metrics and numbers and KPIs, which are all very important, but it's equally important to understand the creative aspect and the intuitive aspects as well. So when we think about the mind, here is a very, very beautiful quote that John Milton says: the mind in itself and in its own place can make a hell out of heaven or heaven out of hell. So it's all in our mind sometimes. If you really think about it, if you really come to a situation like, for example, somebody could be living in a five-star hotel, but could be very depressed. But somebody could be living in a very normal place and going through his day-to-day job, but could be very happy. So it's not just circumstantial, it's not just the material aspects, but it's also about how we tend to take things that happen in our life. So in and of itself, the mind is so powerful. The marvelous mind can do amazing things, but it's just that we need to really consciously make the effort and go in the right direction. So the way it's going to play out is really kind of like very powerful and can manifest in our life in very, very nice ways. To get to that bit, we need to understand a little bit about how it all happens. So here is another view of the brain. Again, don't worry about all those parts. The important thing to take away here is there is this part called as amygdala. So this amygdala is like the hub in the brain, which connects with a number of other parts. But this is the one thing that deals with all kind of like plays a very important role when it comes to our emotions, the way you feel, how you process your feelings. And the main thing that happens is, when it is a very, very important meeting, or when you're about to make a very important decision, or when things get very challenging, what happens is we kind of go into a state of like panic or fear, or kind of a very, how do I say that? The key thing is like we shift into a kind of a fight or flight response, Sometimes it's like fight, flight, or freeze response. What happens is this kind of like hijacks the whole body, and we go into a very specific mode of either avoiding the situation or going all for it, like fight or flight, or we just like press pause and we are like stunned. We don't know what to do. We are like freeze, and everything stops for a moment. The whole world like stops for a moment, like for a few seconds, you don't know what to do. So all of that happens because this amygdala is playing a very main role in kicking that response, which kind of hijacks the whole system. So there are a number of things that are handled by this part, but for our context today, the key thing is that is one very important example. So the reason why we're looking at all these things is to understand that it's not just the rational thinking or analysis bits, but it's also about human beings. We are interacting with normal people who have emotions, who have feelings. And when it comes to meetings, making important decisions, it's really important to understand that we take into consideration both aspects. So that's what we have seen till now. So what you're seeing is our brain and our mind. In summary, there is this prefrontal cortex of the brain, which deals with all your thinking things, intellectual stuff, and the rational aspects, while the other part, the limbic system and the amygdala, deals with all your emotions and feelings and fight or flight response. Equally, on the other side, there is also this conscious brain, which is available to you throughout the day, which is known to us. That's how we think. But there's also this subconscious, the another layer beneath that, which not much is usually available or known to us, but it is active throughout the day, 24/7, it is available for us. To give an example, think about the way you wear your pants, the way you brush your teeth, the way you put on your belt. So any sort of normal dress that you do, the way you eat, the way you use your hand, all your gestures, all your body language, everything, the way you walk, the way you talk, all of these things, most of it, if you imagine, is like involuntary, controlled by a subconscious mind, but you can consciously change it if you want, but the intention has to be started and coming from you in a very conscious way. So most of the habits and behavior that kind of drives us and makes you who you are comes out naturally from the subconscious part of the mind, and is driven by emotions and feelings in the limbic system as well. So we need to be aware and practice more consciousness, more awareness, in other words, like mindfulness. That is really very helpful when it comes to very important decisions that will be helpful for you in your career and in your life as well. So when it comes to subconscious mind and the involuntary behavior, it is also essential to understand that decisions, all that you tend to do, either yourself or with a group, with your stakeholders, with your customers, it is important to understand communication and people relationships play a very important role, because that's the perspective in which they're going to hear and listen to what you're saying, and then for them to make relevant decisions. So as a product person, for example, your designer may be saying a particular way of approach, which from an architecture point of view could be very difficult to do. Or sometimes, even if they both agree, development could probably take a lot of time because of the interfaces and the components that you want to use. Or for example, in other words, a financial point of view or from a marketing point of view, something may or may not be applicable. So in all these scenarios, what happens is there is one part which consciously people are trying to say something, but that is in turn driven by their own understanding and subconscious thought pattern, which could be pushing them to behave in a particular way. So this is what we are going to see in the upcoming slides. And in a moment, we'll cover more about what it means from a product perspective, what it means from a career perspective, and how all of these will pull together from a life perspective. So am I going too fast? Am I doing okay? You guys are all able to, is it okay?
Yeah, the pace is good. They are following.
Okay, thank you. Good, that's nice. So having seen about the brain and mind and how these all come into play, it's now time to move on to understand what it means from a career perspective and wealth and your job and product perspective. So most people, here's a beautiful quote by Earl Nightingale, who says, most people think they want more money than they really do. But in reality, what happens is they settle for a very lot less than they could actually get. How and why does that happen? Because they assume there are a lot of thinking that happens, and their assumptions play a very vital role. And that's a quote by Earl Nightingale, who was very famous, who was inducted into the Hall of Fame when it comes to personal development. And he was kind of the world's most syndicated radio shows a few decades ago. He was a disciple of Napoleon Hill, who wrote Think and Grow Rich, who was like kind of completely changed the landscape for what it means from a thinking and a personal development point of view. So how do we manage this? How do we get the best out of our life? It's all based on our decisions. When it comes to decisions, it could be even small thing like what you have for your breakfast or lunch or dinner, from as simple as that to a very complex decision of, should I accept this offer? Should I go for the next promotion? Should I convince the CEO to go in this direction? Should I talk to the product director to change course? All of those things, everything in life is in a way a decision. And Tony Robbins, who is a very famous person, over like 40 years, he has been influencing millions of people around the world. He has very nicely summed it up, and with due thanks and credit to him, your decisions shape your destiny. So all your future is based on however small or however big. There's some decision that you have made. So be it job, be it career, be it life, be it anything, your decisions shape your destiny. So it's really important to understand what is driving your decisions. How do you come to make those decisions? Sometimes when we even freeze, we do not want to make a decision. We want to wait for a while. That in and of itself is a decision to not decide anything. So ultimately, everything happens based on your own decisions. And there's a very key role that you are playing, knowingly or unknowingly, in what happens in your life. Another way to look at this is what happens in life today. See, imagine today's life in this world, in this day and age of mobile and everything on the net and in the cloud and everybody staying connected and social media. What happens is there's so much information which is thrown at us. All of this information consume the attention of its recipients, says Herbert Simon, economist, psychologist, and a Nobel Prize winner. So with so much of information at hand, what happens is a wealth of information creates a poverty of attention. See the beautiful contrast in that line. Wealth of information creates poverty of attention. So as a product person, you will be dealing with roadmaps, priorities, what to do, how things will move in your backlog. Should you accept something or not? How do you manage change? And what are the metrics that you should look at? How do you want to go by a particular decision to do something or not do something? How do you negotiate with the stakeholders? What is the trade-off that you have? So much of information to deal with, which means the more the information, the less the attention. So we need to have a balance. So you need to strike the real balance. And that obviously is very easily said, that practically it's very, very difficult. So how do we do that? In a moment, that's what we're going to see. So one example is when it comes to important metrics and numbers, a lot of people now say that, it is quite obvious, data-driven decision-making, OKRs, KPIs, critical success factors. So all of these are really important. And we're going to see in a few minutes, in about 4 or 5 minutes, we will see a small poll in which you can answer, and I would like your interaction to see what you can think. And it's a very nice example of how things play out. So how do we come to deal with this information, how they play an important role? That's what we're going to see in the next slide. So something that happens in your life, and even in your career, in your job, in any event that happens in our life, this very simple equation, its simplicity, it's its power. So it's simple yet so powerful. So E plus R is equal to O, says Jack Canfield, America's #1 success coach, who wrote Chicken Soup for the Soul series and a number of wonderful books. And he is very famous for his success principles. So what he says is, there's an event, but there is a response to that event, which together constitutes the outcome. So in other words, the event in your life and the response that you have. So how do you respond to it event plays a very, very important role. For example, think about this. Somebody is stuck in a traffic. Somebody may be too irritated or frustrated. Equally, on the other hand, someone just puts on the music and tries to relax until the traffic clears. So it's all in the way that sometimes you can't change. You probably cannot change the government, the economy, the market, the industry, all of those things, the weather, the traffic, beyond our control. But how we respond to them is within our control. So throughout the day, 24/7, your thoughts, your feelings, and how you choose to respond is in your control. So that actually manifests as the final outcome. So like we saw earlier, your decisions, the information you take into consideration, and together how it influences your response constitutes the outcome. So as a product person, for example, there may be so many things happening, but you being proactive and how you choose to respond will have a significant impact on both yourself and your stakeholders and your team and your customers. So how you take into feedback, how you take feedback into the entire loop, how you prioritize items in your roadmap, all of these things will be based on your own way of processing such information, which basically means that the final output is very, very key, but that is dependent on how you choose to respond, not just about the external events, but it's also about your response. So we will see more in the coming slides on what happens and how you choose to respond. So I would like to pause here for a moment and do a small poll. And if you could take a look at the question and see what is the response, and then that will help us to go through the next slides. Amos, would you be able to start the poll?
So yeah, the poll is activated.
Thank you, Amos. Guys, would you be please look at the question and see what could be your so what do we do? How much more? Do we wait for a few more seconds to end the poll?
Maybe like a minute or two.
Okay, yeah. Okay, good. So we got equal, no loss, no gain.
Yeah.
It's a loss. Nobody thought it was a gain. that's a good thing. Super. Oh, so one more person's loss. Majority is we are on the loss side, which is actually the correct response. Yeah, so 600, two products. So one product 600, another product also for 600. Same price and same impact, 20% loss and 20% profit, would ideally mean if you calculate it, then 600 and 600, so 1200 is your cost. But to incur a loss means that would have been 750. To incur a profit means it should have been 500 cost price. So 1,200 versus 1,250. So it's a $50 loss. But if you on a surface level, if you look at it, what happens is sometimes it looks like very at a superficial level. It's like no loss, no gain, because same price and same level of impact. And we should not get too carried away by these kind of numbers. We should actually spend some time to drill down, go into the level of detail where necessary, and help in thinking through but to make important decisions. That's what we're going to see in the upcoming slides. And I have one more example, which is quite simple, but it's very helpful to actually bring that into context in day-to-day decision making, important meetings. So could we go to the main screen? We can end the poll. Thank you, Alice. So back to our screen. So as we saw, the response to the event is very, very important. And it's not just the external events themselves, which will influence your career, which will influence your decision-making and roadmap, but also not just the events, but response. And that response is influenced by the information taken into consideration and the key context of how do we bring in the thought patterns that we saw, like the unhelpful thought patterns that we saw earlier. We need to avoid them, rephrase them in a way that's more helpful. So how do we do that? The key driving forces to make better decisions, to come up with ways and means in which you can make progress in your life and career is dependent on your assumptions, your core beliefs and values. So the very famous Jim Rohn says, believe like a child and plan like an adult. So this curiosity, the childlike curiosity, and really believing that in a positive way that things will happen for good, that is very, very important. And equally, planning like an adult is also very, very important. So Henry David Thoreau, the American essayist, poet, and philosopher says, I know no more encouraging fact than the unquestionable ability of man to elevate his life by conscious endeavor. So that's what Henry David Thoreau says. So it is possible to make the effort to put in and achieve success in your life. And that is based on your assumptions, core beliefs, and values. So these are like the driving forces of your life. Let me give you a small example here. So let's say you are on a diet. Let's say you are really practicing, you're doing some workout and you want to get into a much better fitness. And at that point of time, you meet up with a friend and you're having a dinner and your friend orders an ice cream and something more, a very tasty, sweet dessert. But being a person who was into all the workouts and being on diet, then you probably would want to say no, even though the ice cream may be very appealing to you. But the assumption is you believe that going by your diet is going to help you stay fit and healthy. And enjoying that dessert could be very tempting, but if you yield into that, it's going to have a different kind of an impact. So these kind of like your own willingness, your patience and persistence, the ability to not get swayed away by what's happening, and your ability to control your own thoughts and how you practice a positive thinking is going to have a very, very big impact. And when it comes to beliefs, not all beliefs are good. Sometimes we may be unconsciously having a belief, but it could be the one that's stopping us. These are like limiting beliefs, and they'll completely obstruct our further progress. While on the other hand, there are also empowering beliefs which will push you into the right direction. So it's very important to distinguish between these two and work upon them, which often takes like deliberate practice over a period of time to change them. I'm saying it's not easy, but it is definitely possible. And fundamental values, like this is how I want to live my life. This is what makes meaning and purpose for my life. Those kind of things will have a fundamental impact on all your thought patterns and your decisions. The way you want to manage your team, the way you want to run your team, the way you want to prioritize things, all of such things will be easily driven by your own assumptions, beliefs, and values. So it's really important to understand how and what they may play a role in such decision making. There could be an unconscious bias sometimes, and if you consciously work on it, it is possible to change them and push you in the right direction. So all of these beliefs and values play a very important role, and it's really important to work on them in such a way that they bring in the positive changes in yourself and with the people around you. So how do we do that? What happens is, what is required is a paradigm shift sometimes. So we need to understand what is the paradigm, first of all. The paradigm is a kind of all your collective influences that you have in your own life, starting from your childhood, your assumptions, your beliefs, your values, your habits, your thought patterns, all of them put together, they constitute what could be defined as a paradigm. And sometimes a shift in the paradigm is really important and required to push you in the right direction, to give yourself a nudge, to get out of the comfort zone and to stretch where necessary. But to an extent, that balances everything else, because going beyond the limit that you can manage could lead to too much of stress and overwhelming, which is not required. So that balance, if you bring in, that will help a shift in your life and career, which will lead to more success and happiness. And the way it happens is by understanding your mind, body, and brain, which is what we have been seeing till now. Like what happens to the brain, what happens to the mind, which are helpful thought patterns, which are not helpful, and how those things are influenced by decisions that shape your destiny, information that you consume, and too much of information creating a lack of attention, versus the other thing about your own assumptions, beliefs, and values. So if you put all of these things into context in what you're doing on a day-to-day basis, that helps you bring in the paradigm shift. And what happens when you do that? That's what we're going to see in the next slide. So your mind plays a very important role, which helps you to create your tomorrow by what you dream today, says Bob Proctor, who was a disciple of Earl Nightingale, whom we saw earlier. So your mind is like a magnet, says Bob Proctor. So when you think of positive things, you attract more positive things. So if you think of blessings, you attract blessings. If you think of problems, you would tend to attract more problems in your mind. So consciously, we need to spend more time in thinking very positive thoughts and making sure that we are able to go in the direction that you want to go. That kind of brings us to kind of important place where we can now start thinking about career and career progress. But I would like to pause here for a moment to ask you, are we okay? Are we doing okay? Are we going in the right direction? I would like to ask you, are you fine? Is everything seems to be making sense till now? Hello? Okay, so as this picture illustrates, what happens in our career is not something that proceeds in a very straight line or in a very linear fashion, but rather it like there are some ups and downs, like rolling hills and twists and turns. So that's the journey of life. So what we need to do is we need to understand that we need to enjoy the life, enjoy the journey, and it may not be very linear. It may not be in a straight fashion. It may not be in a very simple way to say from X to Y to Z. That's not how life plays out. And that's the way our career also happens. So we're going to see like a very super model. It's like how they define the different stages in career. And by stage, we don't mean a particular title or job title, or it's not related to job title, but like very different stages in our career. So there are 4 stages that have been identified by Dr. Jean Talton and Paul Thompson, based on nearly 20 years of research in Harvard. And they came up with this, and CONTD also have done more research in this, and both the links are available in the slide. And they have identified 4 important stages. In the first stage, we contribute dependently. So there's a lot of hand holding, there's a lot of spoon feeding, and people tell you what you need to do. And you're dependent on others to learn from them and to understand what needs to be done. This whole model is built upon contribution. So what contribution you make for the company ultimately determines what kind of a career you can have in that particular company. So that's what they say in these 4 stages of contribution model, in which the first one is you contribute dependently. They have also identified some key factors which will help you to move on to the next stage. And that transition is called as innovation, in which they have identified some key criteria to help you understand where you are right now, what you should do, how your performance will be assessed, and how that needs change for you to go to the next stage. Now, one important thing to understand is it doesn't necessarily mean you need to go to stage 4 to be ultimately successful. You can still be in stage 2 as an independent contributor, and you can retire in your life as a very happy person. That's perfectly possible. But it also helps to understand how all the people go through, the majority of which will end up in either being stage 2 or 3, where either you contribute independently when you are seen as a subject matter expert. People respect your opinions, people trust in you, and they like you and they like your work. And the stage 3 is when you contribute to others, when you could be a product director or a chief product officer or someone at a very senior level, when you manage a team and you are contributing through a team. It could also mean that you're managing a particular business division. It could be a particular department. It could be at any different level. The size doesn't matter, but what happens here is ultimately your contribution happens through others. And the final one is stage 4, in which you contribute strategically. Basically, you are at like a very, very senior level, like at a board level, at a board of directors, or you're at a very C level, like a chief product officer, chief information officer, chief executive officer, chief marketing officer, chief finance officer, like at that level when you basically contribute from a strategy point of view. The links are there, and for you at any point of time, you can take a look at understand what happens in each stage. This is one key element. If I would say that a key element to take away from today's session would be this one, where you understand which stage you are in and plan for the next step so you can achieve success in your career and enjoy happiness in your life. When you have understood about the importance of decisions, decision making, taking things into consideration, information, and moving from descriptions to decisions to make important progress, it is also important how do you prioritize things. And when it comes to productivity, a very simple, probably many of you may know this already, a very simple yet a very powerful model, with due credit to Dwight Eisenhower, 34th president of US. He says, based on importance and urgency, you can say highly important and highly urgent, then it's do it now. If it's important, but still less urgent, then you can set some time for it, decide when you want to do it. And the other one is like absolutely not important, not urgent, just delete it, forget it, and move on. And if it's more important, but less urgent, depending on this, you can see in the matrix, like how you want to do it and decide or delete or delegate. That's the Eisenhower matrix, or the productivity box matrix, which is a very simple, powerful model. That brings us to one of the, almost like we are towards the end of the session today. When you're doing all of these things, when you've planned everything, when you understand what needs to be done, when you're prioritizing things, you are able to positively reframe challenges. Someone still say no to many of what you do or what you want to do. And today's no, you don't need to worry about it. It could be tomorrow's yes. So when someone says no, it basically means they either didn't understand or they need more time to process it. They want to talk to someone else, not yet ready to say yes, but they could say yes in the future. They may need some more information for making some decisions, and they can get back to you later. Or they're not agreeing on certain things, but they are agreeing on some other things. So we don't need to get too worried about when someone says no. That kind of like brings us to the end of what we wanted to cover from a career point of view and a career progress point of view. And we are concluding the session with what it means to think from a wellness point of view. So by wellness, what I'm saying is how things can help to stay in a way that's really very well in terms of all-round aspects, like both your health as well as your wealth and in the thinking. So to stay healthy, wealthy, and wise, taking a holistic approach means that we need to align personal aims and ambitions with professional goals and objectives. One cannot be in conflict with the other. Actually, one should complement the other, not compete with each other. So as long as you're able to align your personal aims and ambitions with your professional goals and objectives, one can make progress in life and career. If it's not possible, then you need to really work on it and try to bring them into balance. And that balance, it's a very delicate balancing act. But if you could do that, then it's really possible to make the necessary steps and bring in the changes that will help in your life and career. So here is a very simple, we're not going to go too much into detail today. It's not possible to cover today, but I just want to give a very brief introduction to this. More details are available in my website. You can take a look at it. So these are 7 elements that kind of provides a very comprehensive coverage to understand things from taking a holistic approach in what it means to think from a life and a career point of view. It begins with you. So you are the front and center because it's about your life and your career, and understanding your aims and ambitions and putting them into right context so you can stay mindful of what's going on and enjoying every day with awareness and consciousness. That's about the mindfulness, the second bit, which leads on to the third one, understanding mind, body, and brain, a little bit of which we have already seen today. That brings us to the fourth element, which is understanding not only from a time perspective, but also person and task. So bringing all these 3 into consideration will be the TPT method, followed by the 5th one, which is about beliefs, passions, perseverance, decision-making, and problem solving. Last but not least, fitness is very, very important in all 3 aspects, physical, mental, and emotional, which will bring into fulfillment in life. Because for fulfillment, we have a sense of meaning, we have a sense of purpose. So remember this, 20 years from now, what you will regret, what you will think back, what you will enjoy. Now today is 2020, imagine 2040. When you are in 2040, what will you be doing? Which will make you happy? So you would more likely be thinking about, oh, I did miss this, I didn't do that. The things that you didn't do would probably worry you too much rather than the things that you did do. So it's important to take into consideration what brings you a sense of happiness, contentment, purpose in your life. So that fulfillment is possible when you bring all of these into consideration. One example is most of the companies that you see in this list didn't even exist 15 or 20 years before. And even if they did, probably like Apple or Microsoft, they were doing completely different things than what they are in today. So in 10 or 15 years, if so much could have changed, and these companies are many of them are billion-dollar companies giving employment to thousands of people, and they've completely radically changed the way the world we live in today. And imagine the amount of change that has happened in the past 15 years. So this is going to continue, and in the next 15 years, the world is going to be very different. And if you're not willing to change, if you're not willing to experiment and move on, then you will be left behind. And if these companies can do it, so can you. You can also do it. And it is absolutely possible for you to embrace the change if you put things into consideration, what we have seen just now. I would like to invite you to take a look at a couple of books that I've written. Both of them are available in Amazon. And my Inspirations podcast is also available in Apple, iPhone, and iPad, as well as Android devices. So when you have the time, do take a look, and I would love to hear from you, your feedback, your thoughts, comments, and suggestions on what could be covered more. And I'm happy to use them in the upcoming episodes. With due thanks and credit to my parents, my sister, my brother-in-law, family and friends, teachers at school, professors, college. Without them, what I'm doing today would be absolutely impossible. So I owe them a lot. And all these wonderful authors and leaders, I'm not going to read each and every name, but definitely all of them, these books have really helped me a lot. And last but not least, thank you so much. And the credit goes to you as well. And it's an honor and it's a pleasure to be with you today. The pre-reading that in which when Amos had shared, I do invite you to take a look at Brittany Packnett. This is available in TED, How to Build Your Confidence. Absolutely one of the amazing talks that I have seen. And Simon Sinek's, you may have already heard about this, Why, Start With Why, How Great Leaders Inspire Action. Again, beautiful, wonderful talk. And do take a look at Daniel Kahneman's book, Thinking Fast and Slow, winner of the Nobel Prize, an international bestseller, one of the best books. So to cover it off, your mind is like a garden. So the thoughts that you have, the feelings that you have, do you want to have weeds or do you want to have flowers? Choice is yours. So stand guard at the entrance of your mind and believe, have positive thoughts, and I wish you the very best in your life and career. If you want to change for your life, if you want to change your life for the better, definitely it can happen, and you can make it happen if you take the right steps at the right time. So if you're worried about the future, don't worry, be happy, and do take action before it's too late. Get in touch with me. Happy to listen to you and have a chat with you anytime. And thank you very much. Have a look at my website, venkdesh.co.uk. Connect with me, LinkedIn, follow on Twitter, listen to my podcast, and have a look at my Amazon author profile. thank you very much again for your time today. And we are moving into the most important session today, the Q&A, and I welcome your questions.
Awesome. Thank you, Venki. That was incredibly exciting. I actually didn't know you have a podcast, so you've gained a new listener.
Thank you, Amos. Thank you.
Awesome.
There are very few episodes. I would like to work on them. I'm waiting to listen feedback, and I'll add more in the future. I'd love to listen your thoughts, your feedback, and what could be helpful.
Nice. Yeah, so for everyone else, we're just about to jump into the Q&A sessions where you can interact with Venkdesh on any questions you have regarding the presentation. I'm going to start because I have a couple of questions. The first one is, there's a slide you had about the stages of contribution, and you mentioned something. You mentioned something about they are pretty much what are the stages you can follow that will enable you grow into your company. Could you really very quickly run us over through that slide again? There's some details I wanted to catch, and then I'll let, after that, anyone else can ask their questions.
Should I share my screen again and go to that slide?
Please.
Here's the slide, and stage one is where you contribute dependently, where most of the people begin their career, and where there's a lot of hand-holding and spoon-feeding, and people tend to learn a lot. Like there's much more on-the-job training. They can also attend other courses and they learn, but they're dependent on other people to what they should actually contribute. Stage two is where, based on your experience, you're moved on and you're seen as an independent subject matter expert, and you contribute more independently, where you have more room to do what you want, and you're not being actually told this is how you should do or this is what you should do. You're kind of given the high-level picture, and you tend to decide what you need to do. So you're contributing very independently. Stage three is where you have like a small team, or you could probably be managing a big department, but essentially you're managing people and you're contributing through others. And stage four is where you contribute strategically, which is you're like a C-suite, you're like on the top, on like the board of directors or chief executive officer or on those lines. The transition from each stage is what you can see in the links that I've provided, the CONTD article. And they outline what are the key criteria that defines. So one thing to understand is when we're changing jobs, or when we are even changing jobs within the same company to a different team, or you're getting promoted, you may fall back to the previous stage, but because you're not starting fresh, you're starting from your experience, you're not starting from scratch. So you will quickly complete the stage and you will move on to the next one very quickly. So it could be days or weeks rather than months. But ideally, when you're starting from scratch as a fresher, like just out of college, that means they'll spend many years in one stage. And as you grow into the career, often people realize, I think I would fairly do by myself. I don't want to manage a team. I would be like, after 15 years of experience, someone can say, I don't want to manage a team. Management is not my cup of cake. I would rather be focused on research or analysis. And so they can go back to stage two, but still they can retire a successful person. They'll be recognized as an expert in the field. So it's okay to fall back to a different stage, but the key thing to understand is you need to be aware of which stage you are actually in, how you can contribute better, and how people will recognize your contribution. So that's the key aspect of this model. So the awareness is more important, and in which stage you are in and which factors will help you to take you to the next stage.
Cool. Okay, great. So if I can map this contribution to like my career ladder, and probably I'm looking at the organization I'm working at, and I want to move to the next step, and probably maybe I can't do it in my organization, but there's another organization I can. Can I use this as a framework to see if it's a good fit? Because I want to move to stage three. Probably my organization doesn't allow me to, for whatever circumstance, I can't do that. But there's another organization that can be able to allow me that. Can I use that? I can use this as a framework, basically.
Yes, 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 very much. You can use this, and the factors that I've outlined is available in the PDF, and this is a very, very handy reference. It could I think I've gone back. It's a very handy framework and a good reference to understand. Oh, I think I should share the other one. 1 second, Amos. Let me try and pull this out video. See if I can link openly. Screen. Okay, are you able to see now? So the PDF links open up in this window. So like you say, they outline the key stages and give an explanation of what it means to be in that stage and what kind of contribution happens. And there are also criteria that they have defined. What is the expectation of your performance, how you perform, and how people tend to recognize your performance? What is your primary role? And the transition issue, this is the main thing, the major stage transition issue they have outlined. What helps you to, what's avoiding and helping to move from one stage to another, and then how you perform. So this is a very, very handy model. The links is in there in the deck, and it's a very good model. Yeah. Is that helpful? Does that answer your question?
Oh, yeah, it does. Thank you very much. I think I'll let the rest of the guys to ask the questions.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'll stop the screen share. Yeah.
Hi, how are you?
Hey.
My name is Joram.
Good. Hey, Joram.
I'm calling you from Karen in Nairobi.
Hi.
My question is on the same stages we're talking about. Does it depend on your academic facts or your performance?
No, it depends on your contribution and how your contribution is seen or assessed from a performance point of view by the organization. Doesn't necessarily depend on any kind of academics. It's pure contribution and how your contribution is deemed as important or relevant from the company in the way they assess your performance. Is that helpful, John?
Yeah, thank you for that.
Someone has said in the chat that I'm sorry, audio problem. Please, will the slides be available as well as the recording?
Yes. So we have the slides
Uchenna Michael Maduka has put it at 4 p.m.
Yeah, definitely. So we'll definitely share the slides that Venkdesh took us through. And also we have a YouTube channel, where we post all our recordings. And I'll actually share all these details on the chat, which actually I shall do right now, which is the links. There we go. So to get the slides, just make sure you're in our meetup group. Please, you can subscribe to the YouTube channel, which the link is there, so that you can also view all our other talks as well. All our recordings are usually posted there.
Super. Thank you, Amos. Thank you for confirming that.
No problem.
Okay, I would like to ask another question.
Yeah, sure. Go for the question.
In this COVID-19 situation we have been going through, there has been a lot of what I call, what we would say, job cuts, pay cuts, and all that. So what exactly are you seeing as is going to make us go ahead? Because right now, we really don't know. We would be lying if we say that tomorrow it will be over. We really don't know when it will be over. So what are we looking at ourselves moving forward in the same situation in our careers, trying to get things work out for us?
Okay, so to rephrase your question, there are two aspects that I see in your question. One is, you tell me, Jerome, if this is okay. So one aspect is like you want to think about what would happen in the future, given the current situation of this pandemic. And the second thing is you're asking, how will I even know what will happen, whether it will be beneficial or not? And so one is the macro level thinking, or of generally what will happen, how it will impact the society or the general community or the country at a very, very big level, which is way beyond our control. So often it's like you can spend time on gathering news and information, watching the TV channels and reading through the blogs and other websites. So taking in the information is very helpful. But those factors at a very big level are absolutely beyond the control of an individual. So we can't be too worried about it. So that is one aspect of, I think, one part of your question. The second part is, how will it impact you? That is something that's absolutely within your control. So the factors within your control, what you can change, that's where you need to focus on, rather than getting carried away and worried by things that we cannot change, we cannot control. So, but it's easily said than done. It's very easy to get emotional, and sitting inside the house, working from home 24/7 months together is an absolute nightmare. I've been going through the same, like many of the other people. Many of you might also be going through like working from home for a very long time. And it's absolutely very different scenario, but things that we can change and we can control is how we choose to respond, how you tweak into the important things of balancing your work and life and family. That is something that you should focus on. So definitely it's a very challenging aspect, which we probably have never seen in most of our lives, and such a big pandemic impacting the whole world. That is obviously a very challenging thing. But in that context, what you can do, so the best of your abilities, rather than seeing it as a disaster, I think we can slightly have a paradigm shift, see it as an opportunity to bring out your strengths. So think about, what did you do enjoy the most as a child when you were like 4 years old, 5 years old, 7 years old? Think back, go back in your life, understand the things that you're really passionate about, things that you really love to do, things that bring you a sense of joy, happiness, and see if you can do those things now, which can, it may take a slightly different form. Somebody may be very creative, they can bring that into design. Somebody may be kind of very analytical, they can bring it into KPIs, metrics, and those kind of analytics and insight. So maybe slightly it manifests in a different way, but think about your own things that gives you a sense of joy, happiness, and rather than doing it for the sake of job, doing it for the sake of joy. So that change is very, very important, and probably because it gives you a sense of meaning, purpose, and fulfillment, you will slowly move on from being worried about the pandemic to be happy about what you're able to do. Is that helpful, Jerome?
I love the humorous way you brought it in. That is good.
Yeah, it's very important sometimes to awaken the child within. You need to think about what really helps us to be happy and stay motivated.
And thank you for that.
Welcome. Yeah.
Hi.
Hi.
Can you hear me okay?
Oh, Ucheda, sorry, we're not able to hear you properly.
Thank you very much for this session. It was very interesting.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Is it much better now? Hello, is it much better?
Yep, slightly better now.
Thank you very much for this session.
Thank you. It's a honor. It's a pleasure to be with you.
I have is this. It seems that product management is more focused on software products, but okay, slightly better.
Sorry, not able to hear you.
It seems product management is more focused on product. And I know one of the challenges we have here in Africa.
We're actually not getting you. We're actually not getting you.
Yeah, maybe
Hello.
you can try typing in the chat. Uchenna,
Hello.
not able to hear you.
Hello. Okay. That's
Lost. Could you possibly try typing in if the chat interface is available? Oh, Solomon has written, thanks, Venkdesh. This was insightful, especially the career section. Thank you, Solomon. Hope it was helpful for you. Oh, it seems product management is focused on digital products. I hardly hear about product management for physical products or services. Yeah, I agree with your question. It's perfectly normal and natural. Hardly others like physical products or services come into the purview of digital products. But I didn't understand how does that bother, or how can we change that will be helpful for our life and career. That's what I didn't understand from your question. But yes, I definitely agree. At least from a software IT industry point of view, the digital side is probably sitting into the realm of products and product management and product ownership. Other stuff is sitting in their own different world. Physical products and services are completely in their own managed in a different way. They handle it in a different way. I think I tend to agree with you. I'm sorry, I don't have a different kind of an answer. Or digital product is kind of that which, but yeah. That kind of a reality, at least from a software and IT industry point of view, that's how it kind of sits in. Is that okay? Is that answering your question, Uchenna?
I also think that project management started from software. That's why it's been there so much.
Oh yeah, probably could be.
So now we are moving into other. In Kenya, we call them MFCGs, fast manufacturing companies. So we are going into that. But initially, it started from software.
Cool. I'm just trying to be mindful of the time. We're about probably an hour, 15 minutes in since we started. If there's no other questions we have for Venkdesh, maybe we can just say our closing remarks. But Uchenna just came back with some more information on the chat.
Yeah. I currently work in a local manufacturing company. We produce physical products, but I feel there has been this unfair balance between digital and physical products. This has created a sense of imbalance in making a career choice. Okay, so Uchenna, the key thing that I take away from your point is you need to kind of think through what is it that you want to do from your career perspective, and probably not necessarily look at it from a physical point of view or a digital point of view, but from your point of view, your life's point of view. What is it that will bring you a sense of fulfillment? What do you want to accomplish in your life and career? And then mold it in a way that fits in to the opportunities available. And the second step would be to identify or create opportunities, because great leaders don't wait for things to happen, they make things happen. So all successful people, if you say, for example, any leading company that you can take, be it physical or software or digital world, Apple created a lot of physical products, but they have been immensely, hugely successful, versus Amazon, which did not create a physical product by themselves, but it was all about taking what's available in the physical world and making things available in a digital world. They provided the access and they made it friction-free. But the difference between Amazon and Apple would be, like, for example, they created so many hardware products, like be it the iMac, be it the iPhone, be it the iPad. There are so many things that Apple has created which completely redefined the whole life, the way we live today, versus Microsoft, which is more into software, but now they're also into consoles and Xbox and other stuff, and Surface, for example. So there's a blend of software and the digital and hardware. The physical products. So software and hardware, physical and digital, there are companies which have a balance. There are some which do not have. Rather than going blown away by the things that exist right now, I think that which will really help you, Uchenna, is to understand where do you want to focus on, and where are those opportunities available? How do you make yourself open, visible, so they can recognize you? That's one approach would probably you can take to help you make the next step, the next leap that you want to have. Is that helpful?
We have to give him some moments to confirm. I think he's sorry about that.
Yeah. No worries. No problem.
Cool. Venkdesh, thank you so much. This has been
It's a pleasure.
Incredibly insightful. I'll tell you a funny story. There was someone who joined the talk, and he was driving, and he had to stop by the roadside to listen in.
Oh my God.
Then he realized that he's causing traffic. He had to say, like, I need to log off right now.
Oh my God.
Because he was really loving the talk. So, speaking, his name is Patrick, and he was sending me a chat telling me that, and I thought that was incredibly nice and good. Do you have any last remarks before we close?
The final thing that last remarks, what I would say is to focus on the well-being, kind of a holistic approach to health, wealth, and being, bringing in a balance, which will help you to actually make much more progress, right? It's like, one example is like, say, if you were going after a destination, for example, and if you forgot to fuel the car, it's not going to go for a very long journey, isn't it? So the fuel is very, very important. And just because we don't have time doesn't mean that we cannot stop at a petrol station or a gas station. And it ultimately going to stop somewhere, and we may not know whether some station is available there or not. So the positive approach, that the mental, emotional energy is very, very important when it comes to making progress in our career and also enjoying success in our career and happiness in life. So all of them go hand in hand. So that balance, the delicate balance is the key. That's the one thing that I would say is very, very important when it comes to bringing in the alignment between personal aims and ambitions on one side and professional goals and objectives on the other side. When we are able to balance them, definitely you can do good. You will make big progress, and you'll be, not only you'll be successful, you will also be very happy.
Indeed. Indeed. So for the guys who joined in, thank you so much for being a part of this. I'll be sharing the slides shortly after, and also I'll be uploading the video on YouTube. So looking forward to seeing you guys at our next talk, which is September 10th, where we'll be talking about steps and tools to create a successful product strategy. So have yourselves a great evening and see you soon.
Asante sana. Asante sana.
Karibu sana.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much.
you.
Yeah. Bye.